move into the next administration and talk about the strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Mhm.
This idea has gotten a lot of attention. It is sort of startling how quickly this has gone from a pie in the sky idea to something that like Rachel Maddow and MSNBC are writing. They're doing rebuttals to like our podcasts basically, and they're like it's wild how quickly this idea has accelerated, how much it's captivated people, both who are in favor of it and people who aren't. Um, to me, the biggest question I'm getting about the SBR is, why does America want to do this? Doesn't this just like I was talking to a journalist today who said, I understand why, as a Bitcoin holder, you would want the government to buy Bitcoin. That would be good for your investment potentially. But why should America be a Bitcoin investor? And I wanted to just to pose that question to you. Like, should America be a Bitcoin investor? And if so, like, why?
Yeah. Well, I think firstly, it's getting a lot of traction and attention and momentum because it's grounded in solving a real problem and a big problem, which is our deficits. That's the initial intent, is how can we solve for the fiscal deficits, the amount of debt we've accumulated as a country. I think the best way to understand that is looking at our debt to GDP. The debt to GDP is a metric that tells me how much have we borrowed from our future versus how much growth are we producing to pay it back. And when you have debt to GDP nearing 130%, you've realized you've over borrowed from your future without the correct investment in the growth to pay it back. So if you don't have enough growth to pay the debt, an easy answer to solve the problem is find more growth. And that's what I think we see in Bitcoin is it's the fastest growing, best performing thing you can own in human history, and especially over the last 15 years since it's been invented. And if you take a metric, David, like 60% annualized returns, Bitcoin has been growing over the last 10 years on average. That is something that's vastly outgrowing the amount of debt we're issuing, right? So the question to the American public is this: do you want to curtail the debt and spend less? What does that mean for you? That means no defense budget. In case we need to go to war, in case someone attacks us, we can't defend ourselves. No social security, for example. These are things that we as a country are spending money on to support the quality of life that we've promised for the current citizens and future generations. And so the question is, do we want to retract some of the things we've promised and given to the American people in order to bring the debt down and keep the growth at this certain level it's at? Or do we want to invest in more future growth while retaining the quality of life that we've granted and given the American people? And I think the proposal for owning Bitcoin is here you have something that's vastly outgrowing the debt required to issue the quality of life that Americans have and love. That is on its face why it's appealing, why it's interesting, why it's garnered momentum, is it's a possible solution to America's biggest problem, at least from a fiscal standpoint. What I don't think is talked about enough when we talk about America owning Bitcoin and the strategic Bitcoin reserve is, David, I think this would be the biggest announcement, economic announcement in American history, potentially. It would be on par with Nixon in 1971, except it'd be positive. And I don't hear that rhetoric enough in DC or on mainstream media. What I mean by that is in 1933, America made a massive announcement. What was it? It was, we're confiscating your gold. We're threatening property rights in this country, arguably. In 1971, America made a really big announcement. What was it? We're divorcing ourselves from the gold standard, which in more layman terms is we're divorcing ourselves from being governed by the immutable laws of Mother Nature. And we're going to enact our ability to debase your currency and inflate your goods and services. In 2008, America had a big economic announcement. What was it? Is we've done discovery and learned that big banks acted irresponsibly, but we're going to bail them out and burden the cost of their mistakes on the public. Now, in 2025, if America makes a big announcement, what is that announcement? It's not defensive. It's not reactionary. It's not against the best interest of the public. It's the opposite of all those things. It's positive. It's progressive. We are pro-technology. We're pro-growth. We're pro-innovation. We're pro-freedom. We're pro-inclusion, equality. We see a technology in its nascency, just like the internet was a couple decades ago, that we can invest in, that can address our fiscal situation and promote the entrepreneurial spirit and the innovators in this country. We want the next Amazons and the Googles and the Facebooks to be founded in this country. We want the fastest growing technology network to be mined in this country. This is pro jobs, pro industry, pro energy, pro innovation. That to me is very inspiring because, David, also governments around the world, they own 2, 3, 4% of the Bitcoin network. So who owns it? The people, the public. The public had access to this long before Wall Street, long before governments, long before corporations. So this is an announcement that acts in the best interest of the public, that actually supports the interests of the people. It's offensive, not defensive. It's progressive. It actually goes to solve. The last thing I'll say is I'm 30, as I mentioned earlier. All of my peers, no one's close to owning a home. No one's close to living a debt-free life. When you look at KPIs to measure the health of society, when I see child per woman crashing, when I see life expectancy flattening or in some areas going down, when I see obesity rates going up, when I see divorce rates going up, when I see suicide rates going up, when I see consumption of antidepressants going up, I can speak from firsthand experience that my age group is getting crushed because the reality is the boomer class has all the wealth in our country, David. They're the ones that own 5, 6, 7, 8 homes. Who's going to win in a bidding war for a house? The guy or girl that's worked 50 years in the workforce or 5 months out of college? No one my age owns a home. No one's debt free. People can fall in love. You're not going to be able to finance a family. And so I think that my age group also has a serious interest in solving the fiscal deficits, in building a strong balance sheet for this country that we can finance a life that we think is worth living. And all of our jobs and our interests and our talents are technology related. So I would love this country to say we're pro technology. We want to encourage entrepreneurship. We want to encourage innovation. We want to be pro industry, pro energy. We want to address the fiscal situation because we want you guys to be having more kids. We want you guys to be owning more homes. We want you guys to be less depressed and less sick. And I think if we can solve the money and solve the deficit problem in this country, I think we solve at least 50% of the hardest problems we have today.